All right, and we are live. Good evening, everyone. It is June 17th. I've got two screens that I'm looking for the date and time because the days are just meshing together. Oh man, just another day in pandemic world, right? It is June 17th, 2020. It is a little after 8, and we are here for round 5 of the Dispatchers Roundtable. I am Ricardo Martinez, and I am with the Code 7 Podcast Network as well as Within the Trenches Media. And this is just one of a bunch of different shows now that I've added to the Code 7 Podcast Network. And there's actually going to be an announcement here coming soon. I'm really excited. I've been posting like these vague posts about different things, and people are asking. Like recently, I did I put the beginning lyrics to "Lose Yourself" by Eminem, and people were reaching out saying, what is going on? What are you talking about? And I said, nothing. Just trying to get all of you to sing the lyrics, which a lot of you did. So, so I just did that. No, there is something coming, but we'll get to that in about a week or two. So I'm excited for round 5 of the Dispatchers Roundtable. And one of my guests here, we've been talking about this for a few weeks now. And actually for a while, we've been messaging back and forth. We are both crazy busy and we haven't kept up with the responses, but we're here and we are about to get this going. So for all of you who are joining in right now, it looks like I see people popping up here, and I'm going to go ahead and throw something in the comments. Make sure that you share this broadcast as well as react. Please feel free to ask any questions. Just remember that there's about a 7-second delay here off of Facebook and Twitter. We're on StreamYard, and we are going directly to the both of those. So to start out, as always, this broadcast is supported by InDigital Elite Next Gen Core Services, and we're going to hit the music and get started. Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome to the Dispatchers Roundtable. Oh yeah. Once again, here we are for round 5 of the Dispatchers Roundtable, and this is going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of things we're going to be talking about here. We were already busting up as this was starting. So, also for my guests that are here with me, I'm looking directly into the camera, and you will see me every so often look to the side, and it's because my screen is here so that I can see you. Just in case you're wondering if I'm stroking out, I'm not. I'm just looking over at all of you, kind of like Brady Bunch style here. So just for introductions here, each one of my guests here are going to be with the Lake County Sheriff's Department out of Illinois. And I've got Emily, who's a telecommunicator. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I am doing well. It is hot as hell in this room, as I was telling you before. So I'm doing all right. And then next up, we got Norm, who is an assistant supervisor over there. What's up, man?
What up? 7 seconds is a good thing for me because then you can press a button if you need to censor me. So.
Oh, well, there you go. That's perfect. if I had one of those buttons, it would be even better.
Yeah. No.
And then last but certainly not least, the founder and editor founder and editor-in-chief of Humanize the Headset, as well as telecommunicator with the Lake County Sheriff's Office, is Brendan. How's it going, my man?
Hi, guys. How are you?
So are you camping?
I am. I came to escape work to come and talk about work on TV or on the internet. Yeah.
Now I feel like a jerk.
No. It's all good.
we were talking about doing this a different date, and you had to work, and you're like, man, I'll just take PTO. I'm like, no, dude, don't do that.
Yeah, I couldn't get it off.
And then, but now you do have the day off, but you're like on vacation.
That's okay though. I'm not at home and I'm not at work.
So I'm sure he planned camping after he knew about this podcast.
Yeah,
so I did. Good. I try to go on all my 3 days off. So this was a 3 days, so I took it.
He just wanted everyone to see his camper.
No, it's in remodel mode right now.
It looks good, man. It looks peaceful there.
It is, definitely.
So I want to learn more about the three of you as we get into all of this. And for those who are watching right now, Emily, I want to know how you got into dispatching to begin with. So did you have any family in law enforcement or public safety, or did you just kind of fall into it? A lot of people that I've interviewed have mostly said, I fell into it.
Yeah, so I pretty much fell into it. It was more of I called in DUI, and I didn't like. We went through multiple jurisdictions, and I didn't like getting transferred so many times. And I kind of said, you know what, I think I could do this better. And then I applied, and I realized they actually were doing their job properly, but I fell in love with it anyways.
That is pretty funny right there. Yeah.
Do you know which agencies they were?
Yeah, so we started in Bannockburn and we ended up in Winthrop Harbor.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
we went through probably 9-10 different jurisdictions.
Yeah.
So
Man,
nice.
That's amazing, right? That is one I think that I have not heard where someone was on the phone and thought, you know what, I can do this shit a lot better. And I want to get into it because, they probably weren't doing it. And then you get in there and you're like, oh, hell. No, they were doing all right.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, man, that is awesome. So what was your training like then as you're going through all of this? Because you get that realization later on, but was it right in the beginning? I mean, was it just straight in and you're on the console jumping in and starting to work, or was there more geography that you had to learn first?
Yeah, so we have a pretty intense training program. It takes about 9 months, and it's evolved over the years. I've been there 15 years. I started with non-emergency calls first, and geography throughout the entire time. We used to have a huge map in our agency where I'd have to go stand up and point to different locations because it's a pretty big area. But even now geography is changing. So it's a constant learning process.
Man, I think that's one of the things that I loved the most when I was dispatching was that, the incidents, incident types were the same, but what was going on in each one of those incident types was always different. And you're always learning. No matter how many years you've been there, you're always learning. We were talking about that a little bit before we started on, seasoned dispatchers and how dispatchers don't like change. And people are always learning, man. And that was probably one of the best things.
Whether they want to or not.
Right.
That's the key.
Yeah, exactly. Do you remember any early calls or a call that has stuck with you or anything? Like I said, we're always learning more. There's always a different call, and every phone call that you take is another story, another part of your story, your career in 911.
One of the early ones that I usually share, because people always have questions about stories, was shortly after I was released from training. I was on my own, and we used to have lieutenants sit in the room a lot. And I took a 911 call, and a female was screaming that she had just been robbed. So automatically you get your heightened senses trying to pay attention to everything. And the lieutenant kind of moved his chair over to me and kind of coached me through it. And we have some affluent areas and some non-affluent, and one of the affluent areas, it was coming from this area, and she was screaming, and finally it got down to she paid for cheese at Arby's and she didn't get the cheese on her sandwich, so she was robbed. And that I still remember the deputy King up on the radio and saying, next time she's going to McDonald's. But it just goes to show you never know if it's a true emergency or not, and you always have to be prepared.
Yeah, exactly. I always tell people that whenever a phone call comes in, you always have to take it or treat it as a priority one every single time, And the way you were talking, I mean, you can't see me, but I was on the edge of my seat here. And then you got to that part. I was like, oh, hell no.
That's how I was during the call too.
Oh, man. Yeah, well, that shit happens. Oh, geez. So, Brendan, how about you? How did you get into public safety to begin with?
I saw an ad in a thing called a newspaper.
Whoa.
And yeah, right. I had dropped out of school. Well, not dropped out of school. I was kind of forced out of school. That's a long story I won't get into. And I was going from job to job to job, kind of coasting because I was kind of miserable,
Mhm.
And I found this job. It sounded interesting. I had a customer service background. So I applied, and that was 12 and a half years ago now. So, and Emily was one of my trainers.
Oh, nice.
She was, yeah.
Very cool. So
The
then,
best one he had.
Yes. Yes.
like that.
She'll beat me if I don't say that.
Yes, you will.
Norm won't agree with that though.
Oh, that's like, you'll see when you get back. So how about so what was it like though when you started out? So it's been, many years now that you've been in dispatch, but looking back at it, how have things changed from when you started to now?
Well, we have a new administration now for the first time since I've been there. And it's wonderful. It's just with our morale has increased overall. We have a great director now, Kent McKenzie, who's doing great things for us. He supports us 100%. He encourages us to do training and just to be the best dispatchers that we can be. So I think that we're evolving as an agency. We're progressing better than we have in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's great.
How about some early calls? Do you remember any of your earlier calls?
I remember one of my very early 911 calls. It was an armed robbery, and it was my first armed robbery, and it was Emily's first armed robbery because she was my trainer.
Oh,
And the guy called. It was at a gas station. He's freaking out, and I'm like, I kind of threw my hands up, like, oh shit, what do I do? Because we hadn't really gone that far into it. It was like
right.
maybe the first week, and you kind of get thrown into the wolves there for a second, but you know that your trainer's not gonna let you drown.
Right.
So Emily kind of had to take over, and it was really intense. I had to say, I had no clue what I was getting into when I started the job, and I remember in my interview, one of the interviewers asked, "What do you know about 911?" And I'm like, honestly, only from what I've seen on Rescue 911 when I was a kid, and that's it. So
I was the same way, man. Favorite show.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh yeah.
So it was pretty daunting. You walk in, you see a console with 6 to 8 monitors, and you're like, holy shit. So
right.
Training for me was really intense because I think I took it a little, not to say I took it a little too seriously, but I put too much pressure on myself. There'd be calls waiting in the queue, and I'd be like, oh my God, what do we do with these? They'd be parking complaints, So I had to tell myself I needed to relax because I wanted everything to be perfect in the chaos, and it couldn't be, So I had to learn how to calm down a little bit.
Oh, for sure. And for those of you who are watching right now, whether it be on Facebook or Twitter, how many of you did the same thing? Were you you were the same way? Because I know for myself, I remember when I was working radios, when I started training on radios, I remember my trainer saying, okay, look, there's all of these calls in the queue. Our job isn't to get all of those, get the board clear. That's not what we're doing. We're not trying to do that. And I'm thinking, yeah, but there's a lot of stuff holding. I need to do that. Just like you, I was putting that pressure on myself as well. And they were saying, no, you'll be all right. You'll be okay. It looks like Kent commented on here, how much do I owe you for that plug from earlier?
We'll discuss my extra week of vacation when I get back.
Wow. Oh, there you go. Perfect. There you go, Kent. Extra week. So Norm, how about you? How did you get into public safety to begin with?
I got into it. It was just, of course, like everybody else, you just kind of fall into it. But when I started, which was 10 years ago, so it was the end of 2009, I was laid off. So I worked for an IT company doing different, network support and website design and that kind of thing. And I was laid off because everything crashed back then. And I had lost a bunch of weight. So I was going through the firefighter process in the town that I lived in. And I was also applying to public safety because I felt like that was more my speed,
Mhm.
And it's really funny. And I think several of us have this same story that I'd gotten a denial letter saying, oh, sorry, we can't hire you at this time. And then I got a phone call that said, hey, come in for an interview. And when I went in for the interview, I went, didn't you guys tell me no? And back then, when I started, there was actually a lot of people that had come through and just didn't make it through training.
Mhm.
And but yeah, I just fell into it, and it's been all downhill since then. So
Well, what was it that solidified that this? Because you've been there 10 years. So what
Yeah.
was it that solidified the fact that, you know what, this is for me? A lot of people have said that, there was a certain phone call that they took, or a situation where they were helping out an officer on the road, or
Yeah.
fighting EMS or something like that. Was there something for you though that really made you think, damn, this is the job for me. This is what I'm made to do.
Well, I think most of us that do this job have something about us that whenever there's an emergency, we are able to just pull our shit together and get it done where everybody else is freaking out. I think that's just innate in those people, and that's why we're able to do the job. That's not something I think you can teach people. So I've always just had that, and I think everybody else here for sure just had that. But I can tell you my first night, we started training on midnights, and Emily was also one of my trainers, by the way.
Oh, damn.
It's really funny because Emily is younger than Brendan and I, and she trained both of us. So it's pretty funny.
Because she's awesome.
She is.
She is. Absolutely.
Thank you.
But my first, we always started training on midnight so we can learn the computer system and all that stuff, ease into it. And my first night, my supervisor wasn't there, but I started training, and it was boring as shit. I mean, I'm sitting there going, this is what we do. Like the phone rang 4 times. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? And then so the next night, the supervisor was back, and she asked me how it went. I go, it went fine, but I expected it to be busier. And everybody that was around went, oh my God, you didn't just say that, did you? What? I don't understand. So I did essentially I said it was quiet, basically.
Right.
And we know how that goes over. So after they were done beating me with a sack of oranges, I got to go back to work. And we wound up having a chase throughout the county that night. And of course, I got blamed for it. But in that moment, because I was not used to it, there's 5 people in the room, and phones are ringing, and people are listening to the radio, and everybody's yelling out something, and they all understood one another. And I was completely overwhelmed and blown away. So I was like, whoa. And I wasn't sure, but I thought it was the coolest damn thing I'd ever seen. And from there, I was like, okay, let's do this shit. Let's go. And I did. So
you're like
Nice.
You're like Philip Seymour Hoffman's character in Twister when the truck falls right in front of the one girl, and he's like, that truck, like, did you see that? That was awesome.
it's true. It was pretty crazy. And all of them in there had been there for a long time, so they were just used to it. It's second nature to them, but it was completely new to me. So.
Man. Yeah, I remember going in and just the way Brendan was saying as well, walking in and seeing everything set up. Now, when I went to the county central dispatch that I was in Southwest Michigan, I had started out in Florida at a small police department. So it was just me for 8 hours. And, when the shit hit the fan, it was crazy in there. But going to this other one where it's central dispatch, there's 3 or 4 of us on at a time. I walk in, and yeah, it was a little overwhelming as well, because everyone is just working their asses off, multitasking like I have never seen before. and also eating at the same time, maybe doing a couple yoga poses. I don't know, but there was so much that they were doing that I thought, damn, am I going to be able to do this? And, before I knew it, I was in the shit and I was doing it as well. But man, yeah, there are those calls sometimes where it's the craziest thing that's going on and you're thinking, this is for me.
Right.
Yes.
This is definitely what I'm here to do, because we're all, we're there trying to help, because for a lot of places it's not about the pay. and we know that we're there to help when help is needed, and
Right.
think outside the box, all of that stuff. Now, going from there, now that we know a lot more about the three of you, and earlier before we started, which Golden Girl is who? Um, I want to go back to, an incident, an episode, whichever that happened at the sheriff's department. Well, not the sheriff's department, but where you are all at the center, at the ECC. So, Brendan, if you can kind of summarize it. Now, I had Kent on for the very first round, and he talked in depth about this COVID exposure, and we had pictures, we were showing what happened and everything, but we got that from the and it's hard to say this too, because I want to say from the director's perspective, but from what I've seen, he's in the shit with you guys as well. So there are some directors that are in there with their people doing everything. So it's hard to say from that perspective, but now from dispatch perspective, what happened?
Well, I think all of our stories here are going to be just a little bit different.
Mhm.
For me, with the COVID-19 deal, I got a phone call as I'm heading out to come into work and start my shift. And they're like, "Oh, you're going to go work from CENTCOM, which is an agency in Round Lake, which is where I live." And I'm like, "All right, whatever." So they're like, "Something happened." I'm like, "Okay, fine, whatever, cool." So I get there and I had to sit in the car, me and another coworker, Neva. We get there and we can't go inside. They said we're not allowed to go inside without our masks, which we obviously didn't have because it was the first day.
Mm-hmm.
And Neve and I got there. We sat outside for maybe an hour, waited for the IT guy to arrive with the equipment and the masks. And we kind of found out what was going on, that one of our coworkers had tested positive for it, and they were taking the necessary steps to evacuate everyone and clean the center. So we worked an entire shift from there that day. And then the next day we returned to the center for, I don't know, maybe a week or so. And then we all got split up again. Some of us stayed within the center. Some of us went into a command trailer in the parking lot outside, and others went to the courthouse, the main courthouse in Waukegan, which is our largest city and county seat, and worked from there for about 10 weeks. And that's where I was in Waukegan. So it was all to mitigate and reduce the spread of the virus so that we could all keep working,
Right. What is that like when you get that information, the thoughts that are going through your head, and then but also, you've got your job that you have to do as well. You're feeling for your Gold Line family, but you're also, thinking about how you're going to continue to do this job with everything being, separated in a way.
Right.
What was going through your mind then, going with all of that? Because I've seen the pictures and I've seen how all of you were set up, and I thought, man, that has got to be an odd way to work, that everyone is, separated like that, but it worked.
Yeah, we made it work, and it worked really well. Initially, I think we were all scared because we didn't know what to expect. Everything was so new and happening so fast. And we were just kind of rolling with it, doing what we had to do to stay safe and continue to work. It was very stressful for me the first few days. My mom is immunocompromised, so I'm worried about her because she works at a bank, and how many people come into a bank. It's like, shit, So I was very emotional for the first week. I cried a lot just because I was afraid of the unknown and what was going to happen. I was worried for my friend who caught it, my friend and coworker who caught it, and just worried about everyone's quality of life and how things are going to be changing. So it was a lot to process, on top of taking the calls from the public who also had to process and were calling us for guidance that we didn't necessarily have at the time. Like we're already Google for so many people. So people call and, well, what about this? What about this proclamation? I'm like, I don't know. Let me Google it and find out, So it was a learning process for everyone collectively, the public and for us.
Man. Yeah, so the only thing that I can compare that to, and it's not even really a comparison, and in the comparison that I mean though is when you talk about being Google, because anytime there was a parade or fireworks, people are calling on 911 for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way that I can compare anything to what you're saying is people calling in because they don't know. Well, this is like heightened by 1,000 times because this is, unprecedented time where you've got this pandemic going on. You guys have an exposure there at the center, and you're trying to take all of these calls from people. In the back of my head, I'd probably be like, man, I don't know. We're all learning.
Yep. Yeah. That was my thought process too. I don't know. But let's learn together.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh man. So how about, well, before I get to this part right here, Emily, how about you? How was this situation for you?
Well, so I wasn't working that day.
Mhm.
I was working the same shift as the person who was diagnosed. So I was worried because they say you have exposure for like 10 days, and I believe there were like 5 or 6 in there. So I was like counting that way. And I actually found out via email. And when I found out, I freaked out a little, and they had a health the health number to call. So I called there, and she freaked me out even more. I had just gotten back from my parents' house because I was taking care of them. Not that they need help getting taken care of, but they kind of need someone to tell them to not leave the house when they shouldn't be leaving the house. So I went and filled up. We had just found out that we were going to be getting a stay-at-home order prior to
Mhm.
this. So I just I went to their house. I took them some food. I filled up their gas tanks, told them to stay home. And then shortly after that, we got the email, and like the health department chief really just concerned me because she said like, oh, the food that you cooked, make sure you throw it away, make sure no one eats it. I have a daughter who's 13. We can't be in the same room together. She has to cook her own food for 2 weeks. I have to cook my own food. And I think it's because they just didn't know. They were trying to make as many precautions as possible,
Mhm.
just to keep as many people safe. I know that she did mention that if we had a job that we could take 2 weeks off, we should be quarantining for the 14 days. And she did specifically tell me you are to go home and you are to go to work, and that's it. You are not to go anywhere else. Now, I know the health department told other people different things, but that's just specifically what she told me. So that's what we did for the 2 weeks. Like Brendan, pretty emotional. As the days, I remember counting the days, like, okay, it's been 5 days since he got diagnosed. So I think we're more in the clear now. And it was like every day was just like a little brighter, thinking that we're safe, but here's a coworker that we care a lot about that's still fighting, which is
Right.
hard to, you
Mhm.
know. And he's not always completely honest, because he's one of them that he cares for others more than he cares for himself, in my opinion. So when I reached out to him, he was joking. He was
Yeah.
laughing a little because I think he was more concerned about how I was reacting to it. So,
Right.
and that's just his personality. We've talked about it since, and he doesn't remember even sending those texts. So he was probably pretty out of it at that point.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
had it pretty bad actually.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
man.
And he's still suffering from it.
He is.
Wow. Yeah, I can't even imagine, the job that we do, we're empaths. You know, you put yourself in another person's shoes to be able to relate, understand what's going on. And I can't even imagine, like I'm trying to, I'm doing that right now as I listen to you. You know, I was listening to you talk, and I can't even imagine hearing this and them telling you all of this stuff that you're supposed to be doing. Man, that and you've got there are a couple coworkers here in the comments who are saying it was really we were all really stressed out and taxing, stressful. But then
Right.
you know, the awesomeness that is Kent, you all rocked it. So
Thank you.
that is good.
Yeah.
Norm, how about you? How did this affect you?
Well, like Emily, I was not there that day, which is funny because I don't even remember why I was off, because Brendan and I worked the same shift and the same days, everything. So I remember getting a phone call from one of our other coworkers saying, this is what happened, this is what's going on, and much like Emily, you can only go from home to work and from work back to home. So I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do? I think for me during this whole thing, the toughest part is being, and I may have even been, I would have to check, but so our center has 27 people, right? Spread across 3 shifts and separate color days where they overlap and all that good stuff. And to go from a room where we normally have 5 and 6 people regularly to a number of nights, I'm the only one in the whole center, is like, well, one, it sucks. But it's weird. And you know, when these guys are going through it, when you really look at it, it's kind of like when you take that bad call, right? And you get through that call, and then afterwards you have the time to decompress, get emotional, whatever the case may be. But in this case, they were actually going through the incident itself. So they were part of the incident, they had to work through the incident, and then they had to, you know, figure out a way to decompress. You know, so it's just, it was crazy, and it still is crazy. We're finally coming back together. For me, the biggest challenges is communication, you know, because we're in 3 different locations. We have people in a trailer in the parking lot. We have somebody, you know, downtown from us where our main office is, and then our 911 center. So being separated is difficult because we're all used to working close with one another and being around one another, and then being able to communicate effectively. You know, we don't have webcams where we can all talk to each other, so we're using Microsoft Teams. And of course, there's a delay if somebody has a question. It just adds to that stress. Our administration, Kent, those guys did a great job at putting this together quickly to make sure we didn't spread in case we got, you know, other people got sick. And there was concerns too, because even though one coworker had tested positive, we had 2 or 3 other coworkers that were out sick with fevers, and we didn't know if they had it too, and we had just been with them. So the one employee I hadn't even seen for like 7 to 10 days because of his schedule, and he was off and all that good stuff. But the others, I had just seen them a day or 2 before. So I'm like, uh-oh, you know, what's going to happen? And is everybody just going to have it anyway, and then we're decimated? You know,
Right.
So it was smart to spread us out the way it was. It was a challenge. I think we learned a lot about what we're going to need to do going forward, and how important it is to be prepared for anything that comes like this. You know, it's tough. It's just been really tough. So
if I can add to that,
yeah,
I think that I think that this whole thing spoke volumes on our resiliency. We did what we had to do in spite of everything else that was going on, and we came and conquered and kicked ass. And I think in spite of all that, we did really well. We made everything work how we could with what we could. It wasn't easy at times, but we rocked it. We did.
Well, and so I'm still in the trailer. So the first time I've seen Norm or Brendan really is here.
Yeah.
Even though we're in the same location now, I'm in the parking lot and they're in the center. I think for me, my anxiety level lowered a lot being separated from most people, because instead of being exposed to 26 or 27, now you're only getting exposed to 5 or 6 or whatever the number is. And that helped me a lot. Just, think that maybe there's a little glimmer of hope in that. I also enjoy kind of the, we complain a lot. We hang up the phone and we have to vent. That's how, well, I do. Okay, Norm. And so that's how I get it out. And a lot of other people are like that. And we don't hear that in the trailer. We don't hear everyone else complaining all the time. And I think that has also helped some. I mean, I miss everyone, but the trailer's also kind of nice.
Yeah.
Plus, it has windows. You can open a door. You can get fresh air. Whereas the center, we have bulletproof windows. It's all brick.
Yes.
You get a little bit of sunlight. If the people that like it so dark will allow the sunlight in.
Right.
I know exactly.
Hate it.
Brendan comes in and closes all the blinds. I'm like, oh,
lights
my God,
off.
this isn't Midnight's, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So the trailer actually is kind of nice.
Yeah. And I would like to add one thing. One thing that I've learned is, as dispatchers, we're used to that high stressful situation. We're not used to it lasting 10 weeks. So I think we still haven't completely come down. We're used to that adrenaline rush, and then we hear whatever it is, one in custody or scene secure or whatever, and we can breathe a sigh of relief and kind of decompress, as Norma's saying. And I don't think that we've decompressed completely, because we're still not back to quote unquote the normal.
Right, for sure. And I mean, man, I hope it doesn't happen, but you see it all over social media. You see it on the news where they're talking like, oh, second wave might be coming along. I'm like, dude, come on. Hopefully not. But man, that has to add a lot more stress. And before we get further into that portion of it, you've each said how, you kind of dealt with this as it was starting and it was going forward, and how hard it is and all. What kind of calls are you taking during this time? Because I can only imagine, just the way Brendan was saying earlier, dispatches Google. So, and WebMD and all of that. So what kind of calls are you all taking? Because also you are all going through this as well because of the exposure there, the stress from that as well. So you add on top of that calls that have to do with COVID-19, with the pandemic. What kind of calls are you all taking?
So I learned raccoons are not allowed to be a pet in Illinois, in case anyone was wondering, because someone called and asked me that. So that was a Google search. Yeah, no, not in Illinois. In Indiana, I guess, but not Illinois.
Of course, in Indiana.
Sorry, Indiana, I didn't know that. I know that now. I can tell my daughters, hey, we can get trash.
There you
go. I have so much to say, but I'll wait for later.
I think for me, a lot of the calls were, I kind of felt like I was a referee or like a preschool teacher, even though I've never been one. I'm assuming that's kind of how they feel, like breaking up arguments or tattling. There was a lot of tattling. Driving past a restaurant and they're not supposed to be open, and I see too many people in there, or someone's on the golf course. It was a lot of people that I feel had good intentions, because they didn't want this to spread, but in turn were making other people that are trying to help it harder on them, because it's hard to tell, to go every different place and try to find if these people are violating the stay-at-home order and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a big part. So if you can picture how 4th of July was, okay, so like in Illinois, fireworks technically are illegal, other than the sparklers and the small things. So you get a zillion calls, right? And it's always somebody tattling on their neighbor, about fireworks, and a lot of times it's legit because they're setting off giant ones and it's scaring the hell out of people. That's what this was like regularly. So it's every day, and on top of it, adding additional things. So as an agency, we have to protect our deputies. So we stopped going on a lot of certain types of calls. So whereas before we could make, as supervisors, we could make a determination, okay, we don't need to go to this ambulance call, right? There's nothing we're going to do and the ambulance is going to beat us there. We don't go to certain ones. But there was a lot more of, what are we going to do over the phone? We had people being desk officers, whereas we haven't had a desk officer in a number of years. So, and it's figuring that out. And then, do we need to go to this call? Is it going to turn into something? Is it going to be? So it added a level of complexity. And on top of it, making sure we ask if they, and I was terrible about remembering it because it was new. And then you don't do it on every call because you're not going to every call, but asking, does anybody have COVID symptoms? Have you tested positive? And then making sure we note it in the calls because the county wants to track it to see how many calls are actually COVID related versus how many calls. So overall, I think at least for a while, we were running less calls. We were going on less calls, but we were still taking just as many calls. So it just added an extra level, which we're used to. I mean, I hate to say it. Everybody comes up with something new and says, well, we got to start tracking this now. But it was just, it's different. And yeah, the calling in, there's one specific place in our county that there was a church that allowed a rental car company to park their cars in this parking lot. So at least every day for a week or so, we'd all get one call that says, oh, they're at church and there's like 20 cars in the parking lot. There's no way they could be social distancing. And it's like, yeah, they're parked there. They're allowed to park there. They're not actually in there. Oh, okay. And that's like, listen, you got to have some sort of, I don't know, understanding. And that's the hard part with people, especially over this issue. You're either hardline one way or you're hardline the other. And, people want to party and they want to get close together because we're people and that's what we need. But there's the people that are scared to death of it and they want to make sure nobody's screwing it up for everybody else. And they think they're being insensitive when they don't do it. So it's insanity.
Yeah, really a double-edged sword.
It is.
That's crazy, man. How about you, Brendan?
Well, in Waukegan, we didn't have phones, so I was strictly dispatching. So it was difficult to roll with the changes because it was a very fluid situation. So things change on a daily basis, and you come in and sit down, you don't have time to check your emails right away. So you're like, oh shit, do we go to this? Do we not go to that? What's new today? So it was challenging to a different degree. It's difficult to get used to dispatching every day and not call taking. I will say it did afford me the luxury of not having to pay attention to what was going on in the outside world and not having to keep up to date with what the rules and regulations are, because I'm one of those where with all this going on, I'm going straight home, I'm going to the grocery store, and that's it. So I didn't really have to pay attention. All I needed to know is what time the grocery store closed. That's all I needed, So it was different for me in that regard. I guess I lucked out from having to be on the phones, but I think it was challenging being on the radio end as well.
Right. So you talk about these COVID questions, and I remember being on the private side of 911 right now. Excuse me. A lot of our market managers with the company, they were reaching out to different dispatch centers, just checking on them and stuff to see how they're doing, and they were talking about all these different lines of questioning that they're adding in, and I thought, oh man, like I wonder, how that is, the working out for everyone. So every single phone call now, is it just a phone call, or were they medical calls only where these questions came into play?
It was every call. So we had to decide if it was a call we were responding to, it was more important because the deputies safety is important here, because if one of them gets sick, now the other one gets sick. Or so we actually put it in that we weren't going to go to nursing homes unless it was a safety related thing that we had to respond to. Okay, so we, as the sheriff's office, we're only dispatching for police. Okay, so we still had to ask those questions though, or we had to rely upon rescue advising us if they called us to assist them. But it's every call, and you have to determine, all right, are we responding to it? If we're responding to it, we need to know if somebody's tested positive, do they have symptoms, whatever. And that's where that extra complexity comes in, because you either have to ask it on every call or not ask it on every call. And that's where it became difficult for people to remember, because this isn't something we normally do. You know, there's certain things we always make sure to ask on a domestic call, you know, weapons, intoxication, battery, those types of things. Well, we're not used to asking, oh, do you have a cold? You know, do you have a cough? Do you have a fever? Have you tested positive? You know, and it's just, and then you have to rely upon people being honest about it.
Very true. Yeah.
That's the other thing. No, I didn't test positive, or no, I haven't had any symptoms, you know, so it's just made it more complicated. And it's, you know, we have to, our responsibility is make sure we get everybody help, but we also have to make sure the deputies make it home safe, and on top of it, not get everybody sick at the same time. So,
right.
So yeah, it technically is every call, but also depended on if we were responding to it or what was happening. So
I still feel very silly asking that question. I don't know about you guys, but I find myself almost every time before I ask the question, I'll say like, I'm sorry I'm asking this question, I have to, or like trying to explain my way through it, even though I would assume most people understand. I still feel like I'm asking something that's way too personal for me to ask.
You know,
but I understand why we're doing it.
Right. I think that's normal, though. I think that is definitely normal, because, you know, you're asking these questions just like you said. It's something that's personal, but, you know, you don't want the person to maybe get offended or anything, and then, you know, just hang up. And then you're like, oh, okay, I need to get this information. But I think it's okay to say, you know, that. I'm trying to think now. I remember there would be a couple of questions when I was dispatching, and I would say, okay, I'm sorry I got to ask this, but I have to. It's our protocol. And then, you know, I would ask, and then the person would usually say, oh, no, that's okay. You know, this is your job. This is what you got to do. You know, I welcome it, you know. And so I think that's okay. But that is one of those things where you're asking these different questions that, you know, you're not used to asking, one, and then two, you don't want to offend someone, but you also want to make sure you get that information, because you've got your field responders that are going out there. So
right.
That too, that's damn.
I think a lot of times people are put off by additional questions because they think it's delaying a response. So I always try to throw that in there. You know, I just have a couple more questions, but it's not delaying a response. It's just for information. Oh, okay. You know, because otherwise you're just like, get here. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to tell people that as well. I would because there were a few times where people would say, why are you asking me all of these questions? Same like you're saying, but I would tell them right off the bat, look, help is already headed out. We already paid somebody out. I'm just asking you these questions for those who are heading there to you now. Right. Oh, okay. I get that. So yeah, so you've got those questions and everything, you know, that you have to ask now. And because Kent is watching, was this and damn, I almost don't even want to say it, because if it ends up happening, you guys are gonna hate on me for it. But was that ever added to like your quality assurance? any QA stuff?
We don't have QA. We've been talking about it, but we do not have it yet. We do not have it yet.
We just had like this paper system with, you know, points and everything, and, you know, address, phone number, you know, is number one and all. And if you don't, you know, you get those marked off.
We don't. So as in our center, when we're all together, so we're all in the room, the way we're set up, if we have, let's say we have 5 people working, we have one person on the radio keeping track of deputies and dispatching them to calls. one person that backs that person up. So any requests made by the deputies, anything, any people ran, all that stuff, they're backing that person up on the radio. And then obviously when they take a break, and the rest are all taking calls and using the sideband radios or Marine unit deputies or Forest Preserve police or whatever. I think for us, we haven't had to worry as much about QA because most of the time there's a supervisor there. And if there's not, we kind of police one another, because if a call goes in and you need that information, you turn around and go, hey, are there any weapons? Where is the person? That type of thing. So it can be, and if it's a problem, we can let a supervisor know or someone else know, hey, this happened. Can you listen to this call and let me know your thoughts? And then it can be handled. So, you know, a lot of times supervisors, so as an assistant supervisor and even our supervisor, we're front line. So we're working. We're not sitting in an office doing anything other than working, right? We're in the room at the same time. So we're not separated. We're not off someplace else doing something else. Whereas I know a lot of times supervisors or managers have a different office. They have a different role to play now in their 911 center than what we have. So there's assistant supervisor, supervisor, and then there's Kent. So there's not a bunch of layers in between or anything like that. It's go straight to him. And again, it's kind of self-policing a lot of the time. So if somebody, for lack of a better term, fucks something up, they're going to know about it right away, and it's going to be handled immediately, and then anything additional from there. So
I think that's good. I think that's very good to be able to do it that way, because, you know, you're everyone is being held accountable for what they're doing. You know, you're right there, and what is it? You know, see something, say something,
right.
And you're jumping on, and so, man, good on all of you to do that, because, dude, I don't want to f something up because my homeboys and homegirls are going to say something to me, and then I'm going to be a dick, and I'm like, man, I don't want to be a dick. So so I think, you know, that way as well is even better, because you don't want your crew to feel like you're half-assing it or something. So
Right.
I like that. I definitely like that. You know, so then with everything that you have dealt with, and, you know, you said there was a lot that you've learned, and there were some things too that you mentioned, but, you know, for those who are watching it and those who may have dealt with something like this, or are still, or, you know, preparing, well, if they're preparing now, it's it's too late, but still in preparation for something like this, you know, if there's a round 2 or anything like that, just continuing to build in the future, what are some of the lessons learned, you know, things that you has really come out of this that I'll remember that for next time?
Well, we're trying to make the Waukegan Center complete, so that we have phone access and we can do everything that we need to do from that area, as opposed to just dispatching. And the goal currently is to have that as one of our backup centers permanently. So they are working on that. Honestly, I think we did really great. I think our communication could have been a little bit better sometimes. But I think given what was happening and the resources that we had, we really hit the ball out of the park, I think. I mean, there's always room for improvement. And I'm sure we haven't had a debriefing with this yet, because, like Emily said, they're not even back in the room yet. So this is kind of the first that we're even getting together to talk about it. So I'm sure more ideas will come from that once we're all together. But again, with what we had and how quickly things were developing, I think it went really well.
Awesome. What about you, Emily?
Go to Norm first. Let me think
Okay.
on that.
That is funny.
I have to agree. Well, it's interesting, and I don't have any other frame of reference other than our 911 center, right? I know people from other centers. I've talked to them, but I've never worked at a different 911 center. So it's nothing against anybody else. This is my only frame of reference. But in our center, and I'm sure all over the place, when the shit hits the fan, no matter what kind of shit it is, everybody pulls through, like period. And everybody supports one another, and and we make it work. Nobody gets hurt. Everybody's taken care of. And then we go, okay, how bad did we fuck that up, right? And when we look at it, we know, okay, this is what we have to do going forward in the future, like
Right.
B said. You know, the great thing is now we have some formalization and some ideas in place, and all we have to do now is improve upon them. And hopefully, if there is a second wave coming, whatever, we have time to do that. So if it hits tomorrow, then guess what? We've already got something in place that we can make work. And then, you know, Kent and IT and all of those guys have been really good about responding and making things happen quickly. It almost overwhelmingly quick, because it's like, okay, this is different today than it was yesterday. You know, it's like when you get a new CAD system, right? You get a new CAD, it's a whole new world every day you come in until you get used to everything. And that's how this is, because there's constant change. And in a job that's constantly changing, that's the whole joke about, you know, change with dispatchers. We didn't have any choice.
No,
we had to do it. And you are 100% right, Ricardo. If anybody out there right now that didn't have to go through any of this is not learning from the centers that had to and isn't putting a plan in place, you're screwed, because you're going to have to do it on the fly and hope to hell that you're able to capacitate it, or other centers around you are going to be able to help you out with it. Because if not, what are you going to do for those people that you have to serve? You better be working on it now. And I don't mean that to be shaming towards people, but that's the reality. It's a business we're in. We can't always be reactive. You have to learn from everybody else and then be proactive in your center. You can't assume it's not going to happen to you, because it happened to us. We didn't think somebody was going to get sick and we're going to have to get split up. So you can bet your ass it's going to happen to you at some point in time, whether it's COVID-19 or protests or whatever it is. Something's going to happen. You better have a plan. So.
Damn, I don't have a mic, but I mean, I do right here, but I can't drop it. Well done. I mean, damn. Yeah, exactly. For sure. Learning on the fly, you know, that's a lot that we do in dispatch. But for something like that, yeah, I'm with you. I want to learn from other centers first before before shit goes down, because, you know, there's just a lot that goes into that, and you've got so much that you have to think about: your own life, the life of all of those involved there in the center, your family, anybody you might have been in contact with, those out in the field. You know, it just goes and goes and goes, and then you get somebody who calls in who, you know, is talking about something else, like this dog's barking and stuff. Like, do you know what's going on right now? There's a pandemic, damn it.
Right.
You don't, of course, but you know, you think it.
Yeah.
So what about you, Emily?
I would think communication just needs to be a little bit better. I've already expressed this to Kent, but and I don't think there's not really a solid answer, but finding out via email wasn't necessarily the best way to find out, only because it affected like my life personally that day. Now, can I wait for work email for 2 days until I sign back into my work computer? If it doesn't affect me, I could care less. And some people don't get work email on their phones. So Kent has changed that in a way that we can get our personal email as well. But I just found out this last week, some of the deputies didn't even know we were completely split up. They didn't know, I guess the Waukegan radios weren't as clear as the radios they were used to. And they would keep saying, turn your volume up, not realizing it's because they're using older radios. So I think communication just across the board, maybe all the deputies were told that and they weren't paying attention, or they were out sick that day or something, but just a little more fluidity from the top all the way to the bottom. So everyone knows that, you know, some didn't even know we were in the trailer. If something happens and someone attacks the trailer, I think that, you know, people should know there's people in that trailer that they need to help out too.
Right.
But Other than that, I think everything went really smoothly. It was kind of nice to leave my house and go to work during all of this instead of staying in the house cooped up. I think that was something that, talking to friends who had to work from home at the last minute, I think it was pretty nice to have to get up and actually go somewhere, even if it was just to work.
It's crazy to think that there are some that didn't know that you were out there in the trailer. Like, if they saw it, what did they think was going on? You know, people getting flu shots, or
That's the key, though. So we stopped. So every day, all of our shifts can go to roll call with the deputies that we work with. They stopped having roll call. So you couldn't be in there. We couldn't be with them. So some of them, I'm sorry to say, they just come in and they do their thing and they go on about their business, and they wonder why this trailer's in the parking lot, I'm sure, but they have no idea. You know, we were, at least on our shift, I was very vocal about it from the beginning. Hey, there's a delay and stuff now because we're not by one another. We're separated. So you guys need to understand, all right, yeah, it's going to take us a little bit longer sometimes to get you the answers that you're so used to getting immediately, that, you know, you're going to have to be patient. And if you don't hear us telling you that, then that's not my fault. That's your fault for not listening. But we deal with that all the time because they don't, you know, they're used to it and they see it one way when they're out there. And if everything is working for them, they just see it as a slowdown. They don't understand why. So she's 100% correct. The communication with that and making sure everybody knows what's happening is very important. So yeah, I obviously Kent has worked on making things better. He's very receptive. If I go to him and say, hey, this is a problem, he goes, how do we fix it? Or I'll tell him, I did this, just so you know, in case somebody gives you shit about it. I did it. And if you need to yell at somebody, here I am. But he's great about that too. You know, he'll let us do those things. So it's awesome that he's receptive about that stuff. And I agree with Emily 100%. The communication has to be on point for these types of things, because we're not face to face with one another experiencing what the other person's experiencing.
I think,
and I would like to add that Kent is a lifesaver, and I'm not saying this just to brown nose or anything, but he truly is a blessing. We've had other people in that position that even today I said, can you imagine if so-and-so was in this position? We would probably,
we'd be dead.
He really made it. Yeah, he made it so that we really stayed healthy. And he truly went above and beyond. He slept at the center for a couple nights, I believe. Yep. Just to make, he was concerned about us. He left his family to make sure we had everything we needed. And that's what, that shows he goes above and beyond.
Oh, agreed. For sure. Just talking to him, you can see that. Having him on round one and listening to him talk about everything. And Norm, the way you put it as well, you are vocal. You mention something to him and he says, how do we do this? That's a leader. A leader has the people there and listens to the people and implements things that way as a team. And Corey says here as well, you've got to be fluid. Just go with the flow and try to be understanding. That's actually good for life in general as well. And then from Carla here, she says, I tip my headset to your agency. Mine has been fortunate enough that we didn't have a positive case. This information is vital. Thank you guys for sharing. So yeah, this is awesome. But, again, back to Kent, that is awesome because it does start at the top. If you had someone at the top who just was kind of willy-nilly doing things, morale would be down. Your communication would probably be even worse than what it is. Or what it was, trying to go back and forth and keep everyone informed about what was going on. Probably separating probably wouldn't have been as smooth. There's so many things that could have gone wrong, but because you have an amazing leader there, man, and because of how all of you performed, I posted episode 328 today with Tyrell Morris. and
Right.
he was talking about the same thing with leadership and how his crew has been doing so good. And I made a reference to Remember the Titans. There's a scene in there where one of the guys says something to the effect of actions reflect leadership. Now, in that sense, it was shit that was going on, but in this sense, it works the same way because all of you kicked ass and your actions reflected the leadership that you have. So that is amazing, and well done to all of you for what you have done and what you continue to do. It's a crazy job, man. We're in some strange times right now. Like I made a reference also to a couple of friends about 2020, and I said it's like someone was playing the game Press Your Luck and was going no whammies, no
No
whammies, no
whammies.
and you landed on a whammy, and that's what 2020 ended up being. It was
and continues to be.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah, but in Press Your Luck, you only get 4 whammies, and then you're out. So I'm pretty sure murder hornets, protests, and riots, but we've got to be at least at 4 whammies. So I think we're good for the rest of the show.
The Mayan calendar, something about that says the world's supposed to end this week, I want to say. So, all right.
If Kent's still watching, I'm not coming in tomorrow.
Oh man. Well, so as we're going into the wrap up of this round 5 of the Dispatchers Roundtable, I just want to touch on, kind of what you mentioned there, Norm, because there's a lot of centers, not just centers. Everyone in the world is affected by a lot of what's going on. There are all of these protests going on, and I've been watching the news. I've been doing a lot of research. I've been doing a lot of educating for myself on so many different things. But I can't imagine what it's like. I've been reached out to by a few dispatchers, and I've been learning that way as well. And it is just mind blowing. With everything that is going on, people being kind of stuck in the middle of, pro public safety, but also for the community, or having family members that are not pro public safety. And then what do? It's so freaking hard and stressful that everybody is going through it. But for everyone who's working in the dispatch center, you've got all these calls that are coming in, and you've told me that you haven't dealt with them personally, but for some of the coworkers that you have, I guess, what has that been like? How has all of this impacted your center?
Well, I think it was my first day off, and I was just at home, and Facebook started lighting up with live videos from Waukegan. And what started as peaceful protesting, there was some opportunists, and it evolved into, some rioting and stuff. And I was watching it kind of unfold on Facebook Live, and people like throwing things at our squad cars, and you could hear gunshots, fireworks, both. It was just insane to watch. And then those that were working in Waukegan that night weren't allowed to leave the center because the protest began pretty much right outside where they were. So they stayed until, I want to say, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. It was really intense, because there's people that that are in this, and just to sit there and watch it kind of happen, you're just like, fuck,
Right.
It was a lot to take in, and I was concerned about our friends who were working in Waukegan, because they were just kind of sitting there, and you never know what's going to happen, so you're just like, wow, how can I help? What can I do? And you're just kind of sitting there helpless because you really can't do anything, which sucks because we're in an industry where that's what we do for a living, was we help, so to be in a position where we're not able to do that, it's like, it sucks.
Right. so much going on, and
Yeah.
again, it's hard for me to imagine other than having these conversations. And this is good. This is good to have conversations like that, because this is what people fucking need, man, is to be able to talk and really listen and understand each other. Step back a moment.
That's the key. That's the key. Right. Everybody wants to be heard, but nobody wants to freaking listen.
Yeah.
Everybody just wants to talk and get you to believe their way of things, and they're not hearing the other side of things. And I do this, so I laugh. People call me Pastor Norm at work all the time. It's not because I love Jesus or anything like that. It's because I'll take people that do nothing but call up and complain because their ex isn't bringing their kids back, but they decided to let them pick the kid up or whatever early and all of this stuff, and they've been changing it. And I wind up going, hey, did you ever think about this? Listen to this. What about this side of things? I try to get them to go, oh shit, that's right. There's that might be correct. Whether it reaches people or not, obviously we don't always know. That's just the nature of what we do. But it's important to be able to hear what somebody is saying instead of always trying to get your point across. Mm-hmm. So I agree 100% with you that we should be having conversations, civil conversations, where we're listening to one another instead of just trying to get our point across and get you to switch over to our side.
Just waiting for our turn to speak.
Yep.
And I mentioned this already in the beginning, but it works with this as well. We're empaths. So when someone is speaking and we're, listening, try to put yourself in that person's shoes as well to learn from that perspective. And it goes both ways, and that's how we're going to get through a lot of this, through conversation again, and really understanding each other and check on each other, man. There are people that have reached out. There are a lot of people who are not okay. They're stuck in the middle. Check on your dispatchers of color because they're not okay. I've been told this, and so I've been putting that out there since like last week, and I had someone send me a message while I was live, and I was looking down and reading it, but I wanted to make sure to make that point and get it across there because, man, I'm a Mexican dude. If this was happening with like my community, I would want somebody to reach out to me because my ass would be stuck. I would be in the middle of being pro public safety, but also pro my community. So I would want somebody to check on me. I would check on you. So that is another big thing, man. Just like check on each other. We're a family. We don't always get along, but we're a family.
Well, that's what families are. I don't get along with my family sometimes. It's the nature of the beast.
Right.
But we all come together when the shit hits the fan.
Exactly. That is the main thing there. So as we're going into the wrap up of this, there's a lot more that we could talk about here, but actually what I want to get to here is, as I mentioned at the beginning, Brendan, you are the founder and the editor-in-chief of Humanize the Headset. I want to give you a moment here to talk about this because there's a lot of stuff that you guys are doing. You have maybe in the last 6 months or year or so, you have just kind of blown up, and everything is adding. There are so many people who have joined your group, whether it be the public facing one or the closed one. For those who are watching and who will be watching in the replay, tell us what Humanize the Headset is all about, where it came from, and everything that you guys are doing.
Well, it started almost 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. I started my RPL program through APCO, and I learned beforehand that there was a service project that you had to do, but I didn't know what it was. So I kind of wanted it to be that, but I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if it would be accepted or, because I was all new to it. we had a previous administration who didn't focus on progression. So a lot of us were kind of living underneath a rock. And like with you, for example, I knew like the hashtag I am 911 movement, but I didn't associate it with within the trenches. I didn't know what that was. And I remember seeing on Facebook all the memes that you had created with the hashtag I am 911, but I just read the memes and I didn't even click to see, you know, that it was associated with your group. So I'm like, in my mind, these groups didn't exist. You know, I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, we should really have some of this stuff, you know. And then I started it, and come to find out, there's a whole shitload of them. So it's been an interesting process. Our goal is to be a resource and an outlet. To that end, our website, humanize911.com. We have a blog there. We talk about a side story to the protests that involved my husband, who works for a retailer that I cannot name, but how it impacted him while he was working for, and how it affected in Waukegan at that same night. So it all kind of ties together there. I talk more in detail about the COVID-19 situation, how it affected our agency specifically. A lot more details there. We have our public group and our private group. Our public page has about 21,000 followers, and our private group, which is geared more towards first responders, has about 3,500. We're on Twitter and Instagram. We have a new thing called Wellness Wednesdays, where we try to encourage people a little bit more, because it's really difficult for a lot of us right now to manage and get through. I know with when the COVID-19 started with us, like we were even self-isolating at home, you know, and it sucked, because you know who do you talk to? You know, you can't talk to anyone. So it was really difficult to deal with that. Currently, we're working on expanding some of our resources that we have online there. And we're going to be implementing a virtual yoga studio type thing in the next month or two. So
Nice.
I'm going to be working on an emailer for that. So if you want to keep up to date with what's going on with us, then just go to the website and subscribe to our email list, and you'll be up to date. So that's what we're working on now, and we're just trying to fit in and trying to see what's not there that could be there, because so many of us are doing, I don't want to say the same thing, but we have the same goal, and we're trying to all be unique within that goal. So we're trying to just continue to evolve in that way and bring things that maybe aren't too common together. So we're kind of all over the place in a good way.
No, it is. It's good. I've followed a lot of what you guys are doing, and people are sharing and sharing. You've got the blogs going out there, and give me the URL again, the website again.
Humanize911.com. And Norm is actually one of our admins.
Awesome. I just added that into the comments so that people who are watching in the replay, they'll have it in there as well. So,
awesome. Thank you,
man. It has been excellent to have you all on. Thank you so much for coming on, having the courage to share a little bit about yourselves, your story, you know, how you got started, some of the calls, and things that have been going on with the pandemic, how it affected you. You know, it takes a lot sometimes for people to really share, but I'm glad, you know, I'm happy that people do share, because this is what it's all about, man. This is how we learn from each other, is from those experiences. That's how we relate to each other, and we continue to evolve. And you know, it's not just technology, it's all of us, you know, learning from each other and evolving with all of these crazy ass situations that are going on right now in the world. But if we are there for each other and we support each other, man, we're gonna fucking do it. We're gonna make it through all of this. So again, thank you all so much for being on round 5, the Dispatchers Roundtable. And for those who are watching, make sure to go and check out humanize911.com. Look them up on Facebook, go on Instagram, go all through social media, and check out everything that they're doing. Join their groups. You will not be sorry. So make sure to check them out. Also, for those who are watching, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, or have any topics or anything about it, make sure to email the show, and that'll be, if I can find the banner here, wttpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/within the trenches podcast. This show and all the other shows will always be free. But if you're looking for any bonus content, and once I get to the announcement and everything else, there's going to be so much more that's coming. And I just can't thank patrons enough for everything. You help me to do everything that I'm doing now. Brendan, you are a patron, so thank you as well so much for that. And for everybody else that's out there, if you want to check it out, it's patreon.com/WTT podcast. Again, that is patreon.com/WTT podcast. And I thank you all so much for all the support. This episode has been supported by InDigital, a leader next gen core services. This will also be available on Facebook immediately for the replay and YouTube. And I'm thinking of adding them to the podcast feed as well. So you'll be able to hear that on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.